Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Hello, everyone. This is Katana, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Smart Women Talk. Today, we are speaking with the inspirational author, Beth Pizzarello, about how she overcame adversity. 2 weeks before graduating from college, Beth was diagnosed with a genetic eye disease that contributed to her eventual blindness. And it took an entire shift of perception to bring her through the intense fear and become capable of meeting and then rising to this enormous challenge. After 12 years of living in the dark, Beth received a newly developed implant. It was a lens procedure that provided miraculous results to her, and the surgery took her from the status of complete blindness to limited use, about 20% of her eyesight. So this was the inspiration for writing her book, and it actually came from that profound moment of gratitude for this journey and Beth's desire to help others on their own journey when dealing with traumatic loss. And I hear that so often. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of never giving up, how to pivot and get where you want to be, and when you get into that fork in the road, and then ways to move forward in your life. Beth, welcome to Smart Women Talk. I am so excited to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much, Katana. I'm so excited to share my story to maybe help other people who are hearing it.
It's so interesting because I just interviewed another gal in our community about her own journey in adversity, and she shared the same thing, that this whole idea of part of getting through the adversity is often the desire to help others. How did that fit into this?
Because I knew what I was lacking when I was going through this. Nobody really ever discussed going blind. I really didn't have any people in my family that were going blind. We had this one wacky uncle who he was a little eccentric. So we just assumed that it was that. He wore like Coke lenses in his glasses, and he did funny things that we never understood when we were kids. But that was the extent of it. And then when I found out I was going blind, the only role models they could hold up were Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder. And I didn't play any sort of musical instrument, and Helen Keller was a long time ago.
Right.
So that was where I was at. There were no role models for me. Plus, the internet wasn't there yet, wasn't invented. And more importantly, the American Disabilities Act came into existence in 1990. So until that time, any employer or anybody could just say that you were not eligible for a job or whatever, and that would be held against you and could be held against you legally. So until the American Disabilities Act came into play, you just scurried around. You really did.
It's interesting you say that, because for people that are not facing challenges like this, you hear about, oh, they passed a bill, the American Disabilities Act, and you think about someone in a wheelchair, maybe they've been in Vietnam or something. You just have these images of what it means. And no one thinks of their sister who became blind in the middle of her life, not even born blind, but it's like, how does someone who is having a normal life and a career, and then all of a sudden they get this diagnosis that they're going to go blind? How does that affect them? Thank God we have a program like this. So can you tell us, before we talk about the whole experience of going blind, how something like the American Disabilities Act supported you through your experience, and at what point did that come to play?
When the American Disabilities Act came into play, I had a job at a college locally, And at that time, they were very involved with politics to make a statement, to accept students who did not progress academically in the same order as other students, but give them a second chance. And I took this job right away to teach, but more importantly, she was involved with doing these political events. And she said, I need somebody to call people for donations and, more importantly, go to the events and stand there and represent the event. And I thought that is the perfect moment, because a lot of people assume that when you're disabled, you don't have skills, they're gone. And I wanted to change people's mindset. So what I would do is I would go to those events. I would say, I'm legally blind. Welcome. I'm Beth Pizzarello, the person you spoke with over the phone, and do this job as good as someone else that had their vision. So I felt that I was at that time almost like a living billboard saying, this ADA, American Disabilities Act, also allows you to hire people that are very talented that perhaps you would not have hired before, but can now. And there were benefits to businesses hiring the disabled. I had a friend who was totally blind, and they gave her someone at times when she had to do reports to be her reader, and they went to her job, and she got transportation to go to the job. And she was hired based on her skill and her ability and not her disability. And that was the biggest difference when the American Disability Act came into play. And that's what my part was involved in, that, trying to make people look at it very differently.
Wow. So it was just ideal. And it was something that you probably didn't really expect, but that's how the universe works, right?
Yes. Yes. And I could talk. Other people were fearful. I had no fear at that moment. I lived many years being fearful, and it got me nowhere. So I thought, with this wonderful legislative law that's come into existence to help me, and I can talk, well, use your skill and put that message out for people who cannot talk about it, and talk about the greatness of having that available.
That's wonderful. Take us on this journey. You were born with sight, but at
That's
one
right.
point when you were in college, I believe, you got this diagnosis. Can you take us to that moment?
I was 21 when I was getting ready to graduate. I was a senior 2 weeks before graduating. I had gone to a party. On the desk were drinks of soda. We were doing finals. And I walked into that desk and knocked all those drinks all over the place and never saw the desk. So I thought that since I was studying for 2 degrees, that it had to be eye strain. What else could it be? So I called my mom, and she made arrangements for me to see our local ophthalmologist. And he sent me off to, it would have been an eye institute, a big eye institute in Philadelphia, for analysis. I was on the top of the world. 2 weeks before graduating, he ran tests, and I came back. I was laughing. I was joking with my father. Get a few drops and I'm on my way. And I go into the office, and he says, Elizabeth, did you notice you're losing vision? And I said, I noticed a little bit, knocked some drinks off a table. So can I have a prescription for drops, and I'll be on my way? And he says, I have something important to tell you. You're going blind. And for a minute, I was like, going blind? And I looked around the room. He couldn't be possibly talking to me. I'm getting ready to graduate in 2 weeks with 2 degrees, both sight dependent. And he said, no. I said, okay. I said, when is this all happening? And he said, oh, if things happen the way we see progressing, you will be blind by 40. I said, blind by 40? He wasn't too far off. I was blind by 38. I have to say, that day, what really pushed all my buttons was when he ended the conversation with, sorry and good luck. because at that moment, when I went back to see my father and he was in the waiting room, he goes, "Oh, some drops? You getting some drops today?" And I said, "No, not today, Dad. It's just the thing that has to take its own course." And I went into and I closed my eyes in the car and pretended like I was sleeping, and I could feel the tears going down my face. And I kept thinking, the expert says to me at the end, "Sorry and good luck." What? There was no good luck in this. Who was going to hire a blind accountant? Who was going to hire a blind scientist? Answer: nobody. And this was in 1983, before the American Disabilities Act. And I just saw all of my dreams just crumbling. And when it came, I believe the moment that really made me blind before I was 100% blind physically was the collision between losing my self-confidence at that moment and not being able to see any good things happening in the future for me. That's where I got into a spin. And we do sometimes. You go through that thing. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? That was totally exhausting. And looking back on it in retrospect, I think I was more tired from the spinning than I was from actually at the moment taking action, because the spinning is draining. And I could say, and to anybody who's spinning, if you're spinning, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It really doesn't get you where you need to be.
I'm wondering, what was this like from age 20 when this diagnosis happened and you go into denial, right? There's all these steps because you went through that, right? All these steps through the loss. So tell us a little bit about that next 20 years, what that was like. And then was there a shift? Was there a pivotal moment when all of a sudden you found someone or some confidence, or you had an aha moment? What was there something, was there like a pivotal moment? Because
Yes, there was.
Okay.
My sight, first of all, my sight I lost in dribs and drabs. Yeah, I would have periods where I would lose a lot of vision, and then periods when I didn't lose any, and I would think, "Oh, thank God it's over." And it wasn't. I initially started losing vision where my periphery started closing, where I saw things through like a telescope. Then things got very blurry, where I could no longer see people's detail. Color left shortly after that. Reds and oranges looked the same at one point. Yellow was invisible. Blues and purples looked the same. Then they turned black. And what ended up happening then, I could only see everything in black, gray, and white behind wax paper. And that's the way it stayed. My one eye is totally blind, and the other has the 20% vision. Even with the operation, they could only operate on the one eye, which is this eye, because that was the only eye that was viable. The other eye is totally blind. That's why I wear dark glasses, because I'm very light sensitive. And secondly, the blind eye is a traveler. So it moves on its own accord. So I find it a little bit distracting when you're talking to somebody and they're watching the bouncing eye. So that's why I do all of my interviews with my glasses on.
Yeah, no, I would do the exact same thing. And where was it where you had that pivotal moment? Because it seems like there's a point where you find the gift and you go, aha.
The pivotal moment was in the autumn time, and I had gone out to my mailbox. This is Florida. I had gone out to my mailbox, and I'm chitty-chatting with my neighbor. The sun is going down. She leaves. Now I turn around. I can't get back to my house. I see the little light where the house is, but there's shrubbery and all of this there. And I have to cross this because I couldn't find the driveway. And what happened was I tried to head towards the light, took a big fall, and my face hit what I call hit, and I ate dirt. And I kept falling, and I finally crawled crying and found the house. That was the moment when I said to myself, I am never going to do this again. There's got to be a better way. Because for a while there, I stayed in my house and it was all safe. And if you don't go out and this and that, you think, oh, I'm going to live a safe life. But you know what? When you get caught off guard, you have to at least come to terms with what you're dealing with. Before then, I just skirted around about my sight loss. I would go to a restaurant and I would ask my friends, what are you going to order? What's good here? And they'd say, here's the menu. And I would say, I have a little bit of a sight loss problem. How about if you tell me what you think? Going blind is bigger than a little sight loss. And I had to come to terms with that. I had to look at myself, and I had some vision, look at myself in the mirror and say the words, you are going blind. You are going blind. You don't have a little bit of sight loss, girl. You are going blind. And you need a better idea than doing nothing, because 0 plus 0 nets 0. And if you're not an active participant in your own life, I figured out that the world kept going on, and life kept going on. And I either had to step on it and join or do this circular nowhere situation. It was going to be one or the other. And I had to make that decision. You're in or you're out. And when that happened, when I ate dirt, that was when I decided I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of doing nothing. And I think that was the pivotal moment, was when you have to reach a moment where you have to come to terms and really be honest with yourself. Wishing away your problems and hoping them away is not going to do it. You've got to be an active participant in your life. And I wasn't. I was just standing back hoping that, oh, somebody's going to fill in the blanks. They're going to push me and show me what to do. You know what? When there's nobody, you really, even when there is someone, you have to rely on yourself. You've got to be an active participant in your own life. Even to have anything change, you can't pivot if you don't know where your starting point is. And that's what I tell people. Bad things happen to really good people, okay? But you know what? It doesn't define your story. It doesn't mean that's the end of it. You can make changes. It's not easy. I remember I had felt like I was evicted from my life for a long time. And then I met up with a blind woman. I was riding on the bus and I said, I'm so mad. I'll never be happy. I'll never be happy unless I can sing. She said, never is a really long time. She said, did you ever think that when you were in kindergarten and I was in kindergarten, were you learning the alphabet? And I said, yes. She said, you were reading it, right? I said, yes. She said, I was reading the alphabet too in Braille. And she said, carry it further. You like cartoons? And I said, yes, I did. And she said, I like them too. The difference between you and I is that you had to see them to understand them and make them real. I used my imagination and I heard the same words you heard. She said, we're not so different. We both have the same goals. We just have to get there differently. And that made a really big enlightenment in my life. She was absolutely right. She was absolutely right.
So did you, at that moment, having that conversation, because she had to do total imagination, did you have a sense of gratitude that, oh my gosh, I've had the gift of actually having sight. So when it's taken from me, I still have it because our imagination is so powerful.
Absolutely. And the other thing she brought to mind, which I didn't even think of, is that she said when she deals with people as an adult, she finds that her blindness works to her advantage because she said, you have to work with the cards you've been dealt with. She said, nobody could anticipate what I'm going to do. So I work things of my own accord. I listen. She goes, where you get misled as a person who can see, you use your eyes to determine a lot about people. This person looks the right part. She said, I listen using words. Words are very powerful. She said, you can drive someone to their knees choosing words, but I also can see people very clearly, 20/20 vision, listening to them speak. She said, that's my weapon. I listen to words. And she said, words, listening is power. And you'll learn that. So she says, never feel sorry for me. She says, I probably are more on top of it than you are. This is very freeing. I have to tell you in one respect. People don't see you. They don't see you got zits on your face. They don't see how tall you are, whatever. So everybody, when I was at the Lighthouse of the Blind, they judged you as what they could hear from you. So I remember being at the Lighthouse with a woman who had won a lot of beauty contests, but her attitude was very negative. And I would see her, the people talking about her at the Lighthouse saying, she's not a very beautiful person. She's very sad. She's not very beautiful. The first time this gentleman called me beautiful, I felt, hand me a tiara. I am Miss America because the visual wasn't in the sentence at all. And I have to say that is very freeing. No one has a bad hair day when you are blind.
Oh, that's so great. So let's talk a little bit about this. At this point, you hadn't lost your sight completely. You still had your sight.
That is
And were
correct.
you working? So did you, so, you know, when you hit rock bottom and you ate dirt, and you had that epiphany that, hey, I'm going to do something, I'm going to fight. Was that when you ended up getting that job, or what happened? Like, at what point were you able to get back into a career or something?
The eating the dirt was when I was not classified as legally blind. Legally blind, you have to have a vision of 20 or 200 and greater in disability, or have in your best eye 20% vision. So I was not eligible for the lighthouse until I reached those parameters. So when I was eating dirt, I learned to do things on my own. I used my foot. I used to joke about it like a tap dancing foot so I could get a feel for the terrain. At times I would joke with people, I bet you thought I was getting ready to audition for the Rockettes, huh? But I had to put a little bit of humor in that. But I used my foot as my tap dancing foot. I also had this pocketbook that I figured out with its strap. If I swung it back and forth, I could figure out whether how wide like the aisle was so I wouldn't walk into a wall, or with steps I could drop it so I could get a sense if it was going to be a deep step or a narrow step before I went down them. And for the longest time, I used creative solutions. But
So,
you know what? They carried me.
so why did you not use a cane? Because that seems like that would.
I was not eligible. And the other thing was, until I became legally blind and went to the lighthouse, I didn't work for a period because I could not figure out how I was going to do it if if I hadn't been trained to navigate. Because I foot and my pocketbook was helping me. My training was to be a teacher, a college professor. So how was I going to do that and just use my tap dancing foot and my pocketbook? I didn't think that was a success story. But when I went to the lighthouse and they taught me different skills about being blind, and I got my red and white, and I learned about the advantage of counting and listening, and a lot of things that I had not really learned to use as a skill. When I got all of that, then I went back and I was a college professor. And I was a professor that the students couldn't wait to have. But I took high risk students, and I also did not let them know I was blind. I set up the classroom by count. I knew everything was based on count. So I'd walk up and down the rows. I also told my students, who lacked a lot of self-confidence, that I was going to run this class like a game show. So I needed to know who they were, and I wanted them to contribute. So at one point I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the point. Who wants to get 2 extra credit points? What I want you to do is stand up, announce your name with confidence, and be proud of what the idea you're going to share with us. I said, I'm delighted to hear all your ideas. Everybody's going to have a chance. Okay, who wants to go for the first 2 points? And what I would do is I would just point out in the air, a student would stand up, and then that way I could check off the students who had contributed. And that's how I did it. So I outfoxed the foxes. So none of those students, because I knew they'd eat me alive if they knew that I couldn't see exactly. Same thing when I had a sense that they were cheating. I really couldn't see them. So I told them that I had a science degree, and that when I sensed their anxiety was such that it was affecting their ability to get good oxygen in their system so that they could find the answers correctly, I would point to them and they are to move to an open seat. And that way they could restore their oxygen and do really good on the test. And a lot of them told the dean how happy they were that they found out the value of oxygen. But the bigger thing for me was that I was able to keep track of them without really making an assumption about someone that perhaps was not correct. So they all loved it. They was like the number one instructor. Everybody wanted to get into my class because they felt that they had gained so much from me. So I never told them I was blind. I did their tests at home. I had a student next door at times when I had them do essays. She'd pay her to read them to me because I knew the points, I knew the material. This was all hot to me. So I just had to make sure that they knew the material that I had presented to them. So that's how I worked around it. And finally, the dean and all of them knew I can't hide the fact that when the van pulls up that says transportation for the disabled, you can't, and you're getting off with your white and red, you can't deny that. But I did not share that with them. And I had enough knowledge of between the numbers and the count and the way I ran that I was pretty good at it. So that's what I tell people about pivoting. It's not easy. People say, oh, you seem like you got it a little bit together. I'll tell you what, when I first found out, I crumbled like a piece of paper. I had met people at the lighthouse who told me their stories, and they were the type of people that said, oh, bring it on. The rough of the tough, bring it on. I was not one of those people. And so that's what I also want to share with my story, that you don't have to be the bravest cat to get your victory. You don't. I wasn't. I was never going to be the big hallmark person. When we were at the lighthouse, was hearing about this guy who had skied the Alps as a blind person. I thought it was never going to be me. And when I had gotten my surgery where I got some vision back, I wasn't going to be the first one to say, let me go skydiving. But I did find out one thing that was true, that when I dug really deep within myself, I had the power within me to at least identify and combat my challenges, at least see them. And that wasn't something that you had to be the bravest person to do. It took a lot of digging. And yeah, it takes a lot of strength depending on how much you want it. Don't eliminate yourself as not able. I am not able. Sure, you are. Learn the value of, instead of starting your sentences with what you can't do, start your sentences with what you can do. It changes your mindset so that you can build on your small victories, and you can reach those larger challenges by doing that. So that's what I tell people.
Yeah. So here you were really legally blind. You were teaching, and far into the future was it that you got this call or a letter? What happened that you found out about this implant? And tell us about that process. What did that do to you?
The moment of gratitude, more gratitude than I had when I finally found happiness and I figured out I was more than just sight. I had a lot more things within me and that were not sight dependent. And that was really a great thing to know about myself. The surgery is funny because I had a pain behind my blind eye, and it was really like freaking me out. I thought, gosh, you have a pain behind a blind eye, give me a break. So one of my friends had called her relatives, who was an ophthalmologist. He said to go to this institute locally called Bascom Palmer and see if they can help her. So she brought me down, and this doctor, we ran all these tests, and they do it all in one day. And then he buzzes back to it. And he says, Elizabeth, why are you here? And I thought, oh, great. He doesn't even know why I'm here. I said, to solve a pain behind my eye. And he said, I can tell you this. We don't know what is causing the pain behind your eye. But I said to him, Doc, I know the spiel. I've gone to the best eye institutes. I know I'm totally blind. I said, so if you can't do anything for the pain, I get it. And he said, actually, Elizabeth, today is your lucky day. And I said, my lucky day? He said, yes, I have a colleague here who has created an implant for people like you, and you're the ideal candidate. I said, really? I said, would you suggest a relative to do this? And he said, absolutely. You have nothing to lose because you have no vision and you have everything to gain. He said, the one eye is not viable, but the other eye, you'll see what, after 12 years, we don't have a baseline to go by. So you get operated on. He says, I want you to go see my colleague. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. Who would ever think? And to me, that's another part of my story that I want to share with people. Who would ever think 25 years ago, when I was diagnosed, that doctor who told me I'm sorry also told me that he envisioned in 25 years or so, they would have procedures that would help people like me. But when I was just graduating college, that wasn't fitting my plan of action. But he was very right that this day had come as far as technology. It had come as he had predicted. And the greatness I tell people about my story is that this day would have come anyway. Technology was such that this was destined. But the difference is that I could have chosen to be miserable the whole 25 years. And this day would have come anyway. But instead, with the choices I made, I was able to thrive, not survive, but thrive through the blindness, find a happy life, and then have this miraculous second bite of the apple. What could be said about that? But what also could be said about technology is that the doctor I think, thought that I would just pick up where I left off. Boy, over a decade is a lot of time. Last time I had sight was when AOL Little Man was run across the screen for dial-up internet. When I got my sight back, you all had smartphones with icons. I felt like I am the modern Rip Van Winkle. These things were incredible. And they were so incredible because now I could see them, but I had not a clue how to access smart touch devices. I have a funny story. When I was with my sister, we had gone to this nail salon. It was very overwhelming because there was so many colors. It was just like an explosion. So I said to her, I'm going to go get a coffee. So I went next door and I said, where's your coffee? And she said, the smart machine. And I said to the woman, how do you operate the smart machine? And she showed me. I said, how do you get the cream? She goes, oh, in that smart machine. Oh, how do you do that? So I go to the cash register and she says, okay. I said, now how do I pay for it? She goes, you put your credit card in the slot. I go, what slot? I'm not really familiar with that. So she rings me up and she says to me, lady, it's almost as if this is the first time you've ever seen these things. And I said to her, what would you say if I told you this is the first time? And she said, you're so funny. Have a good day. People don't assume without the red and white, before when I was blind, you just hand them your card and everybody takes care of the rest. Same thing. Nobody assumes, oh, there's a smart machine over there. You're blind over there. Where's over there? So it was a whole different acclimation to new things, but so grateful for the second bite of the apple. Just, I have to tell you, my biggest thing is gratitude more than concentrating on how much I've changed or people have changed. It's not about that in me. It's about so happy I see the dandelion in the sidewalk instead of it just being this weed. It's a different level of appreciation.
Oh, that's
It
wonderful.
really is.
So it sounds like I say in adversity, there's always a gift. Is that
Sure.
the gift you found, is this idea of just being in gratitude for the smallest things?
For sure. Being in gratitude for everything that I see every day. Now, my implant, 10 years old, a little bit over that, and I'm one of the first people to have it, has a lot of problems. There are times where I can't read, I can't see clearly, but you know what? I'm grateful for the days I can see clearly. I can tell my story. And the other thing I've learned about myself is that I don't have that fear of if I go blind. I know that I've done it. I also know that I wasted a lot of times for nothing the first round. And I know that your confidence, your attitude, and your taking charge of your life are what's most important. And those things have not changed within me. And that's what I tell people. You have strengths, you have unimaginable strengths, but you don't look at them. You only look at what you're losing. Look at what you're gaining. For me, my hearing, my ability to discern is something that I did not use with my vision. The other thing is many people say when you go blind, your other sense kick in. And that is yes and no. How that works for me was that my sense of hearing at that point, which I needed, only kick in when you emotionally accept that your hearing is going to be your primary sense. Until then, even if you can't see, you do that turkey neck thing, like you're trying to see something and rely on something that does not exist. So once you embrace your hearing, you let go of your vision, then your hearing is splendid. I learned to cross the street. You can't see lights, you can't see anything, just learning to listen to traffic patterns of pedestrians, listening to how close cars come to you. That's all something that you might not be inclined to do if you depend on your vision. Well, I'm just going to try to see because this is a lot of work. But using your vision, using your hearing is when that kicks in, you have your freedom. And until then, that other sense, that sense of whatever you think is going to help you will not help you. You've got to change your mindset about it.
Beth, this has just been so wonderful hearing your story and having you share so much and helping all of us. That's why I thought to have these stories of overcoming adversity, because every single one of us, we have pain, we have adversity, we face multiple things during our lifetime. And so to hear your story and of how you've overcome it is just such an inspiration.
Thank you. And like I say, for the new year, I say to people, the new year is renewal. Renew yourself. Look at all the strengths you have and get the don't out of your sentence. Say, I do, I can. When my sentences changed, my direction, my life changed too. And that's what I have to say. New year, new thought, renewal.
Oh, I love it. So your book is called Eclipsed, My Journey into Blindness and the Miraculous Surgery That Restored My Sight Decades Later. So just give us your website or how you want people to find you, because I know they'll want to come find you. And then, of course, we can get the book on Amazon, but I'm sure you have information on your website as well. So share your website, please.
My website is BethPizzarello.com. I'm on all social media. I'm on, all of them, including LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm all over. And you can find me there. And you can also see the podcasts that I have there to help people, help you to see a different way to view your circumstances right there even on Facebook. And I just want to thank you, like I say to you at the conclusion of this interview. Thank you to Lynn, part of your group, who has done all of making things happen as far as social media. Sinead, who started my social media when I had virtually none. Gerarda, who is my artistic person and the person who did my cover, her artistic rendition, and was my first editor. Thank you, Gerarda, for many gray hairs that I gave you. And like I say, it is truly, life is a collaboration of people. And I think that's the other thing. My story is about collaboration with my family, collaboration at points with the Lighthouse, collaboration with all of you. So that is where we need to look. Look at all the positive people in your life and look at all the positive things that are happening.
And also to trust that the universe has a plan for us and to just be present and let go of all that fear of the future, resentment, regret, and just be present and trust that process. And you are just a shining example of that.
This interview has been wonderful and you've renewed my spirit too.
Oh, good. Thank you, Beth, so much for being here. And that's
Thank
Beth.
you.
You're welcome. Very wonderful. So everyone, please like the show, share it, subscribe. And until our next show, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album, When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.